Dr. Prashanta Kumar Ghosh. It's my immense pleasure to introduce now today's speaker of this session, Dr. Prashanta Kumar Ghosh. Sir is an associate professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering in Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He obtained his PhD in electrical engineering from University of Southern California, Los Angeles, USA in 2011. During 2011 to 2012, he was with IBM India Research Lab as a researcher. He was awarded the Inspire Faculty Fellowship from Department of Science and Technology, Government of India in 2012. He was awarded Center of Excellence in Teachings Award category of Electrical Engineering for the year 2010-11 in USC. His areas of expertise are signal processing, information theory, wireless communication like speech signal processing. His research interests are in human-centered signal processing with applications to education and healthcare. Now, I would like to request Dr. Prashanto Kumar Ghosh, sir, to enlighten us with his insightful words. Please, sir.
Thank you, Sangeeta. I hope you all can hear me. I guess I did a quick help. I need to share my screen, but I don't think I can do that. I don't have access to the share option. So if you can allow me to share, that'll be great.
Yes, now you can share, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I think now you can see my screen. Okay, I hope you can now see the full screen mode. So
Yes, it's fine, sir.
yeah, thank you all for joining to listen to this particular area of research that we have been working on for last few years. And there is also a good set of people who are working across the globe on this problem of dysertic or disertic speech processing. I call it DYSP, just to separate it out from DSP, which is digital signal processing. And what I'm going to present now is a set of challenges that we have faced, and in general, as a challenge to work on this area, and opportunities going forward.
Sorry, sir, to
Yeah,
interrupt.
please.
Hello. So we are
Please.
unable to hear your voice.
We can hear.
Suprita, you can, I think, check your end. It's audible from our end.
Okay, then I'll go ahead.
Yes.
So I'll be talking about the opportunities as well in this area. In case you get excited, would like to work on this area, do feel free to reach out to me and similar researchers. So before I say about these areas and the research work, I must mention that all the works in this area are done by the very energetic and enthusiastic members of Spire Lab, and it is their work which I'm going to present. So here is a glimpse of the Spire Lab website, and here is a quick glimpse of the vibrant team members who have been constantly working hard on various problems, including this particular one. In Spire Lab, we work in a number of areas, but they're all connected through what I call as human-centered signal processing and applications, right? You have any questions, please feel free to email me or this email ID as you see. So we work from basic speech to understanding how speech is produced, not just using speech signal, but also other modalities such as real-time MRI or electromagnetic articulography. Then we do audiovisual speech synthesis analysis, right, where you record visual movement, meaning the facial movements and hand gestures. We also try to develop algorithms which we try to put into an usable form, like an application in a phone, and try to see how it is useful for people to use them, right? So we try to do all the bit to see what are the challenges lies in this pathway. Right? And this project in particular, one of the classic example where we actually start from the beginning, where we interact with patient to get data, to do experiment, to develop algorithms, and then put it back to them for their use. So that's what I'm going to talk about now. Feel free to interrupt at any point of time and ask. So you know the title, but this entire talk will be divided into three major parts. As you can see, the three major bullets here. I'll first talk about what is dysarthric speech. Some of you may not know. And then I'll give you an idea of what are the various research directions that are being pursued currently in the area of DYSP, dysarthric speech processing. And then I'll present you a series of experiments with very interesting findings that we have been working on for last few years, right? Those will be three parts. So let me begin. Is there a question? Hello? If that's not a question, please mute yourself.
Yeah, all of you mute your microphone, please.
Okay. All right. So now let's first understand what is dysarthria. See, when we speak, it's a very complex process. We actually use something like 80 to 90 muscles in this part of the body to maneuver motion of various articulators like tongue, lips, jaw, velum, palate, and all of that. And there are some of these that the names that you see, 4 of them, genioglossus and all of that. So what in this video I'm going to show you is an illustration of various muscles that are involved for various articulators, right? You get a sense of that. And because it's so complex, as you know, a kid takes nearly 4 to 5 years to learn speaking. So maneuvering this whole set of muscles in a very orchestrated manner is not an easy task for the brain. So it takes time for learning. On the other side, if you look at listening, it becomes very, very fast, right? So by all of this, what I mean to say is that, brain controls these muscles. And if there is any problem anywhere in this entire mechanism, brain giving signals to muscles through certain neural connection, right? And then these muscles will accordingly contract or expand or give some directions to the actual organ, and then the organ moves, right? That's how we speak. Anything in this complex process goes wrong, particularly because of any neurological reason, right? So, for example, you might have had an accident. Because of that, certain connections from the brain to this muscle got lost. Or it could be that naturally it happens often for several people that the neurons between the brain and the muscles, they are dying, they are drying out. Or it could be that the brain center, which is the motor cortex, that itself is going bad, right? In all such cases, it will affect into your speech. It will come in your speech. It will not happen one day, certainly, right? It will slowly degrade. And as you see a person getting this problem, which is very difficult to diagnose, right, to begin with, but you start seeing certain signatures in speech, which will give you an idea that probably he's suffering from such a problem, that there is a neurological damage and making his or her speech difficult to understand. And that's the condition we call dysarthria. I hope it clarifies everybody what is dysarthria, right? Now, by World Health Organization, they define dysarthria as the following: is a speech disorder caused by muscle weakness, and it can muscles become weak because they lose connection to the brain, right? Although brain gives signals, but the muscle doesn't get the signal, they become weak. And it can make it hard for someone having this problem to talk. People around will find it very difficult to understand that person, and so on and so forth. So let me play 2 clips for you to understand what it sounds like when someone is suffering from dyslexia or having dyslexia. If you cannot hear me, please tell. Hope you could hear that. I'll play the second one.
No. Rese.
Both the speakers, there is, you can imagine they're male, right? They are speaking in some Indian languages. They are not English, because we work with, in particular, my group works with all Indian language data, because we can get all Indian patients here. And as you can see, in both cases, they're struggling to speak, or rather, they're speaking, but probably you're not realizing or understanding. It is not because you don't know the language. Probably some of you know the language. Even a person knows that language won't be able to get what they're speaking, right? And these 2 persons are not having the dysarthria or the neurological damage for the same reason. They have 2 different reasons, and I'll talk about some of those. So what are the signs of dysarthria? So one, of course, as I just said, it will be a slurred or mumbled speech. And then this patient will either talk too slowly, softly, or too fast. And it will have problem, this patient will have problem with moving his lips, jaw. It often comes into other activities such as eating, right? Because your muscles are weak, so you'll have difficulty in even eating. So speech will sound like robotic, like as you saw, it was not sounding natural. And you see even certain changes in your voicing, right? Sound will become more breathy or hoarse, and so on and so forth. But detecting or understanding it is in general difficult by normal individual. Only a neurologist or a speech pathologist can do it well. There are a large number of reasons, right? It could be brain stroke, it could be injury to brain because of accident, could be tumors in the brain, it could be Parkinson's disease, it could be amyotrophic lateral sclerosis or ALS, could be Huntington. There are a bunch of them that can cause such condition. But among all these conditions that can cause dysarthria, we have been working with only 2 of them. And they are these 2, Parkinson's disease and amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. So I'll be telling you or discussing here or presenting here on these 2 in great detail. Feel free to again ask any question if you have. Others, I don't have much idea how they impact speech, but for these 2, I'll tell you a good amount of what is our understanding at this moment. So first, let us understand what is ALS, right? What happens in ALS? So what happens in ALS is that, as I just told you, from the brain to the muscles, right? There are connections, right? Neural connections. So one neuron after another neuron like this. So it will be a neuronal pathway from the motor cortex to the muscles. And for whatever reason, not known even today fully, the neurons in this pathway start dying. So if neurons start dying, meaning the connections become weak. So the brain generates signals, but the signal doesn't reach the muscles, right? And due to that, brain starts losing control on the muscles. And more importantly, it's a domino effect in the sense that once it starts, that means one neuron start dying, all the neuron will gradually die. So at the end, you will not have any connection between the brain and the muscles. And pretty much, as you can understand, if you can't move this part of the muscle, you can't eat, right? So it'll be super difficult for you to survive. Right? Although rest of your body is very normal, let's say. isn't it? And that becomes life devastating. As I said, there are various symptoms, just like I talked about dysarthria in that particular case of ALS. And you will not only see in the speech, like when somebody has ALS, they may have only speech problem or also other body parts, right? Because it's related to motion, related to the movement, to the motor cortex, to the muscles at various parts of the. So you move your leg, motor cortex in the brain controls that. You move your tongue, motor cortex in the brain controls that. So it's a control center, command center. So any connection from motor cortex to various parts, depending on what connections goes bad at what point of time, you will lose control over the whole body. So your body will become paralyzed at the end of the day, right? At the end of the disease, I'll say, right? When it is very, very severe. So here I'm going to show you play three clips. One of them will be the one that you just heard, but the other two will show you that when people or patients are not too much into the disease, how do they sound? So let me play three of them.
ഒരു വഞ്ചി തുഴഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്നു.
गोले चल रहा है.
Right? So from left to right, if you go, the severity of this disease increases. And with disease progression, the slurring in the speech increases. Now let's look at what is Parkinson's disease. In the Parkinson's disease, the problem is not at all between the brain and the muscle connection. The problem is with the brain itself. So in Parkinson's disease, the command center gets into trouble because there are some nerve cell that generates dopamine, which actually helps in giving this command from the command center. So the neurons that generates dopamine, they start drying. For that purpose, the command center itself fails to generate signal. Although the connection from the brain to the muscles are all right, but brain itself has given up giving up, right? Because at the command center, things are going bad. So signals doesn't get generated there. Whatever poor signals gets generated, they come, and that causes problem in the muscle and associated body parts, right? It should be speech, it should be any other. So Parkinson's disease, I'm sure many of you have heard, but most likely many of you have not heard about ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. So here, let me play again three of them from Parkinson's disease, a different severity level.
அதான் சாமி கும்பிட்றாங்க.
नाली में पार होता है.
No, really say.
So you can see that as you go from left to right, the bloodiness and slurriness in speech increases. Now let's understand if someone has ALS or PD, to what volume that even happen in India and across the globe. Recently, these counts are going up because of the lifestyle and many other reasons, but in India still less, right? As you can see, it happens 1 in 100,000, which is good news. But I'll tell you a bit later. We work with hospitals in Bangalore where we see a lot of patients, because in India we have a large population, right? So even if it is only, maybe 0.001%, but that's a large number. And most of these people are poor, so they come to hospitals which are affordable, and that's why we are working together with. And for PD is 7 to 10 million, unlike ALS, which is much less. So let's understand about the life expectancy. Meaning, when someone gets ALS, uh, how many years will that person live? As it turns out that half of the population die in uh, around 3 years. And then out of the remaining 50%, 20% die in 5, and 10%, 10 or more years, and so on and so forth. But you may be surprised to hear why they die, right? The reason most of the time, the doctor told us that the reason they die is that they fail to swallow their own saliva. See, for salivation, I mean, salivation will happen, but to swallow the saliva, swallowing is again a very complex phenomenon. You have to maneuver some muscles here to move what is there in your mouth in the food pipe. But it takes enormous effort for these patients. So I personally have seen, I've been recording these patients from 2014. I personally have seen these patients take sometimes 2 to 3 minutes to make one swallowing. So doctor made multiple attempts to swallow them. Otherwise, what happens is they keep on salivating and the saliva comes out of the mouth, right? And very difficult to manage these patients in the hospital, particularly during recording. It's even more challenging, right? So what happens when you lose control on your muscles, you cannot even swallow your own saliva. And at that point, the saliva will keep still get generated, right? Saliva, you can't stop. And this saliva, while they're sleeping or any such, when too much saliva has been generated, it can go into your breathing pipe and then you choke and die, right? So this is how doctors tell that most of their patients die in practice. Unlike ALS, which is a life-threatening disease, once you get ALS, it cannot improve. It always deteriorates. Unlike that, PD, I think, is a better one, where there is still treatment and therapy that has come, while no such works for ALS at this moment. And in case of PD, as you can see, the life expectancy has increased from 9.4 years to 14.6 years, with a lot of medication, therapy that has been developed, right? And that's a great news for us. But of course, patients, when they get this disease, they'll suffer from such conditions. Now, how about knowing that whether I have ALS or PD or someone has ALS or PD? How do they know? There is no one particular disease. For example, if you have certain, let's say, blood sugar, right? You go and test blood and you get to know you have blood sugar. But that's not the case with ALS and PD. It cannot be done through single test. It is done primarily with help of, neurologist who assess you based on your medical history, symptoms. They examine you neurologically. They ask you to do certain tasks, and then they realize that you have the symptoms of ALS and PD. And today, as I said, there is no cure for ALS and PD fully. For ALS, no. For PD, you can still hold it, but you cannot fully cure it. So we can only manage their symptoms. As there are very, because not a lot of people get it, unlike, let's say, asthma, right, which is very, very well known, and a large number of population get it. But in this case of ALS and PD, that's not the case. So a lot of awareness program happens, starting from Ice Bucket Challenge to, people working for these patients, helping them to, do their management in life through creating smart chairs and all of that. And you may know Stephen Hawking, which is a scientist, as you see on the bottom rightmost. He was suffering from such a devastating disease. But of course, there was a very special equipment that was developed for him, which can read his mind and brain and can make speech or write, right? But of course, that's not the case for every individual that could be done. In this context, I must mention about someone from France, a music composer, in fact, who I discovered when I was watching what is called Paralympics. Just like Olympics, there is a Olympics for impaired people, right? If we maybe their organs chopped because of some accident, and so on and so forth. So in the closing ceremony, they are playing a music, and then at the end, they said that that music was composed by someone who is lying on bed paralyzed because of ALS, and as you see on the screen, but the only organ that was working for him are the eyeballs, so he could move his eyeballs, and with the movement of the eyeballs, he had a setup where he could control the mouse of a computer in a big screen. And with that movement of the mouse, he could do literally everything, ordering from online shopping, to writing emails, to composing music. You can imagine how powerful that is, having just the eyeball movement being intact. So in these diseases, typically there are three parts of body that get compromised much later. One is the eyeball movement that remains because they're involuntary, is not controlled by motor cortex. Then the heart, because it constantly keeps on pumping, and lungs, right? And then kidney, because these are vital organs, right? It has to. So these are not controlled by brain, just like we, like in a manner similar to our hands and legs, right? So this, I thought it is worth mentioning, and you can explore about him more if you're interested. Okay, so having said all of these about the ALS and PD, you may be wondering, okay, I've been talking about various severity level of these diseases, right? How do we even quantify them? So there are two measuring scale. One is called ALS-FRS-R, ALS Functional Rating Scale Revised, and the other one is MDS-UPDRS, which is from the Movement Disorder Society. And these two respectively gives a scale or value which tells how severe is the disease. Let me just explain you a bit one by one. So ALS-FRS is actually from a paper which was published in 1999. And for doing this rating, a large number of questions are asked to the patient party. And there is one aspect, which is speech, as you can see number one here, right? So if someone having a normal speech, which a person can have, because this part of the body is still not affected, then you give a score of 4. But all the way down, you can see under speech, loss or useful speech will be given a score of 0. Sorry, will be given a score of 0, right? So for every such categories like salivation, swallowing, handwriting, and many other, cutting foods, walking, climbing stairs, all of them has this category. So the ALS FRS-R is a very detailed set of questionnaire based on which this score is defined. But we use the speech part because we're interested in the result 3 alone. Similarly, if you look at the MDS-UPDRS, is also a large set of questionnaire on various fronts, right? For example, here it is non-motor aspect. So they find out what are the cognitive impairment that has happened, right? It could be depression, anxiety, apathy, sleep problems, and all of that, right? But under the motor, there is the speech comes the first, right? So in speech, even here, they'll ask what kind of abnormalities you have. Here, the values are exactly opposite. So if somebody is normal, we give a value of 0, and somebody is severe, we give a value of 4. Right? And there are a whole bunch of other questions as well, but that doesn't matter. So for us, what we're interested in the speech, the dysarthria part, right? So we get this course on speech of that person. And here what this table shows, you don't want to get overwhelmed by this table. It shows that various kinds of dysarthria, which are on the rows, can lead to various kind of perceptual effect. For example, let's say somebody has this hypokinetic, you can see here my mouse, right? if somebody has a hypokinetic dysarthria, what it means is that certain kind of nerve connection gets damaged, or certain parts of the brain gets damaged, which are affecting certain part of the body, right? So in this case, within speech, if it is hypokinetic dysarthria, then you have a articulatory inaccuracy, meaning you will be not able to make right articulation, right? Then you will have problem with voice quality. Your voice will become breathy or hoarse. You'll have a also pitch will be monotonic, right? There will be not much variation. Also, loudness will be very, very constant. So people generally give stress at different points of time, right? As I'm speaking, let's say. But these people will have a very monotonous, constant loudness. So accordingly, there are many other categories, and accordingly, they affect various types of aspects of speech. And this all happens because, as I said, depending on what part of the motor neuron gets compromised or damaged, right? And depending on that, we have various clinical symptoms accordingly. So people have done a thorough study to find out compromise or neural death on certain motor neurons causes what kind of clinical signs and what kind of dysarthria. We'll not go into the details because we are going to go into more an engineering experiment with this kind of patients data. So now first question is, we are interested in dysarthria. So what kind of speech task we ask them to do, right? They have to say something out. Can they say literally anything? Or there are certain kind of sounds that reveals the disease conditions the best, right? So here are three different types of tasks which are clinically identified. One is respiratory phonatory coordination, which is by asking the patient to say a vowel for long enough time to their best extent, right? So for example, I will ask the patient to say as long as you can. That's the first task. The second task is diadochokinesis. Here we ask the these patients to speak small syllables repeatedly as fast as they can. For example, if you ask them to do pa pa pa, pa 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 like that, or ka 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 like that, or pataka 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 like that, right? That's how we ask them to speak. And if you have compromised subsystems, then you will be failing to speak that out. And then, of course, we ask people to speak normally, which is single words or sentence or paragraph, or sometimes we ask them to speak naturally out of their own, or engage them in a conversation, right? So that way we get all kind of aspect of speech subsystems that are utilized, right? It could be articulatory, prosody, and all of that. So these are the three main types of speech stimuli that are used, and we do use all of them in our studies. So let me show you an illustration of the diadochokinesis task, right? Pa 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 pa, right? Let me play the healthy individual first, then you get a reference that how fast a normal person can speak. And then we'll play the ALS, which is the first column, and next the PD. So let me play the. Now I'll play the PD. You can see that the agility of speaking has gone down, right? He is struggling to speak. Then let us look at ALS. You can see how much struggle that person is making, right? And by looking at it, it looks like a normal individual, but because of this problem, he cannot speak even one pa in 1 second. For example, here in the plot, you can see 0 to 1 second. He can only speak one pa sound, but while the healthy controller, healthy individual can speak 7 of them, right? So I hope it makes the point. With that, I stop the first phase of the talk. I'll stop to take any questions if you have at this moment. I hope it gave you an idea of what is dyslexia, what are the symptoms, what are the problems, how the speech changes, and what are the challenges that a patient with dyslexia from ALS and Parkinson's disease face. Anybody has any question?
Sir, like these symptoms, if we'll go to the medical professionals, they might be aware of these type of unique characteristic of, say, ALS or PD. So basically, how that speech processing engineers and can help them to maybe diagnose and something we can do further for extracting meaningful information from this speech or something else.
Good question. So what they say is that first, there is a huge patient load. So what they say is that if we identify a patient, for identification, we don't really trust computers. That's what doctors say, right? But once we identify a patient and give them medicine or therapy, can you at least build some algorithm, build some application through which the patient can speak and that system can keep on giving a rating that whether you're progressing or you're the same place of severity or you're decreasing or deteriorating. That they can do from their home. That will be of great value to this patient because these patients have mobility problem. They can't come to hospitals, right? So if we can sense certain features from the speech that can help us tell you're doing better with therapy, that is great benefit to them.
And sir, another question is like this Parkinson disease and other disease may be extracted from EEG signals.
What is extracted? Say again.
Detection means detection of these diseases may be possible through EEG signal. Yes.
Well, not, I mean, see, if you have to do EEG signal, which requires much more sophisticated setup for the EEG setup.
Yes.
In practice, in neurology departments with NIMHANS that we collaborate with, they do not use EEG for every patient. It is done through purely, an interaction with the doctor for long enough time with certain questionnaire, knowing the medical history, symptoms on certain tasks, including speech task, and doctors make a call. It's based on the doctor's judgment. See, what EEG can give you the brain activity, right, in particular. So we have to be very specific on the motor activity, right, in the case of ALS and PD. So there are works with EEG even being used to record certain part of the brain which is active for the motor activity. But for diagnosis, at least I have not seen doctors doing that.
Okay. And sir, like recently we have started reviewing the speech decoding from imagined speech. So means in this case, like the person who is suffering from these diseases may not be able to speak properly. So is it possible, we have started just so we are trying to decode the speech messages from the EEG signal. So at what extent, sir, we can achieve, maybe if you can highlight something on this.
Very good. Yeah, that's a very, I'll say, futuristic, problem. And if we can get some solution, it will be of great value. But I must also tell at the same time that because I have seen these patients, I have recorded data from them. Most of these patients are mediocre, meaning come from middle class family or even lower class family. I think even to have their daily earning, they could be, labor or they could be farmers. So I think while we can think of putting EEG, what they are thinking, accordingly get the EEG signal, convert that to speech, that may not readily today translate to something that will be useful for them in real life, right? So, for example, I have talked to the ALS Association of India, right? They are one of the biggest challenge today is not even with speech. Their biggest challenge is that for people who are giving up their lungs, so their eyeballs are still moving, right? Their kidneys are functioning, but their lungs are now giving up, so they will die. How do you think of creating, making them survive in the home condition? Otherwise, you have to take them to hospital, put along with the oxygen cylinder so that they can survive, which is very difficult for them.
Yes.
So how do you create solutions which is really useful today for people on the ground?
Yes, yes. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question, anybody so far?
Prashant sir,
Yes.
I have one question. It is related to the assessment of the severity of ALS or PD. Do you think that so a neurologist is assessing these two conditions and giving a score, and another score which is given by the pathologist, speech pathologist? So while developing systems, for example, the development of severity assessment system based on speech, do you think that will there be any sort of differences in the the severity is recognized by the system?
Yeah. So good question. Here for the speech part of the severity scale that I talked about, that is done by only speech pathologists. That is not done by neurologists. So neurologist does other tasks, which is non-speech, right? So in this, so what happens for a patient, I'll tell you in the hospital. So when they have this disease, they feel that there is a neurological problem. So they are taken to the neurology department first. Then the technician does a basic questionnaire, some of these even, right? And then they wait for the doctor. So doctor then, based on the questionnaire that they have answered and an assessment session, doctor declares that, yes, you have ALS, let's say. Once they get declaration, then they go through another batter of questionnaire, which now help them to assess the severity at neurology department. After that is done, they send to this pathology department where we actually sit, right? Speech pathology department. There, when they come, we do the speech pathology related activities, recording, doctor does their the speech test and all of that to give them the score. So we use, for our work, we are using the severity score given by the speech pathologist, not the neurologist.
What if that speech pathology, most of these, so we are working with the All India Institute of Medical Science here. So, so there I have not seen, doctors referring their patients to the pathology department because there is no pathology. Some hospitals may not have pathology, and the assessments will be done only by the clinic, the doctors. So based on these scales, whatever you have shown. So we work with stroke patients. So we the doctors use a scale of NIHSS score. So there will not be, because there is a, like you have shown before. So there is a speech dysarthric assessment component as a part of those scales. So like in that way, we have in NIHSS score also there is a scale. But we can use that scale, that part of the score for the assessment. That's what I meant to ask.
Okay. Yeah, see, if there is no pathology department, of course, doctors can directly, the neurologists can directly do that assessment. Now, typically, these assessments are done not directly by the doctor. So these are done by asking the caretaker of the patient, because patient may not be able to even respond sometimes, right?
Right.
It is best peer. So in that sense, there will be some correlation among these various scores, right?
Yeah.
So if somebody is difficulty in eating, most likely they'll have difficulty in speaking also. So if we do not have a reliable or a speech severity from a pathologist, a substitute of that from neurologist will be good enough, I think. That should not be a problem.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, if there is no other question, I'll move on. So now I'll give you an idea on what are the various types of problems that in this area of dysarthric speech processing. So I try to present that in one slide first and then give you details, right? So the first thing, let's begin from the bottom right? So there are a lot of people working on developing techniques to automatically recognize speech from these dysarthric people, right? See, we have today Siri, Alexa, they do fantastic on normal people, at least if you speak English, right? But if you look at these people, the way they are speaking, neither Siri nor Alexa will recognize them even if they speak English, because they're so slurry, right, and blurry. So there's a lot of work happening in this area. Then next, go up right, is the AAC. It's called Augmentative and Alternative Communication, where they try to develop alternate means of communication. For example, the eye movement I talked about, right? So if you can, with the movement of your eye, if you can communicate a message, let's say there is a big screen, based on your movement of the eye, it can identify, suppose there are icons, right? I need water, there's an icon. I need to get to toilet, there's an icon. I'm hungry, there's an icon. Mosquito is biting, there's an icon, right? So if you can go and look at that, and automatically system understands and call your caretaker to help you. Otherwise, you are paralyzed, literally. Next is the quality of life. Right? There is a whole lot of work happening in understanding what condition of ALS and Parkinson's disease actually lead to what kind of quality of life. For example, see, suppose someone having ALS of severity 3, let's say, right? In 3 severity, maybe that person has not lost all sounds, speaking all sounds, right? What is important is maybe in that language, whatever the native language of the person, he has still capacity to speak certain sounds with which he can survive, he can communicate to people, right? So quality of life won't be that bad compared to someone has already lost those, right? So people try to relate that what severity condition, what kind of speech parameters and many other body parameters lead to what kind of quality of life. Then, of course, as you'll all agree with me that early detection and monitoring is an important aspect here. So before even you get to the disease, if you can somehow sense that you're getting to the disease and declare, that will be a great value, right? Then you can start therapy and other things, and which is not easy because getting to know what are the early symptoms. For that, you need to really record from people who have not been diagnosed yet, right? And it's very difficult. If you're not diagnosed, they have not come to hospital. So how do you even get them, isn't it? In fact, doctors tell me from NIMHANS that majority of their population comes from West Bengal. Very strange. And they say that many cases from West Bengal happens like this, that the patient starts having this slurry speech. So they think that there's some problem with patient's mouth. So they typically go to a dentist. And the dentist thinks that there's a problem with the teeth. So they say that you have to pull off some teeth and you will be able to speak okay. So this, and dentist has no idea about this disease. And the patient also believes that that's the right thing to do. So they pull off some teeth, doesn't help. Pull off more teeth, doesn't help. Pull off all teeth, doesn't help. Then they come to NIMHANS. Okay, so doctors say that most of the patients from West Bengal come and they don't have any teeth. We say, what happened? This is what we have done. So okay, so the awareness is very important today, I think. So doctors say that by looking at somebody who's having this problem, sensing that there may be a neurological issue, people don't even, want to think that way, right? That's the problem. So that will be of great value if you can think of. But this is a really challenging problem because you have to collect data of people who have not been diagnosed, and out of those few may be diagnosed, you have to reveal what early features can tell about this disease. Next is articulatory kinematics analysis. This also we have done at NIMHANS to understand which articulator are most compromised. Is the tongue, the jaw, the lips, the velum, right? Which component is giving up? See, all of them won't give up together at the same time, right? Some will be compromised to different extent. Understanding that will be giving great value because that can be created for assessment. Then acoustic analysis of dysarthritis. So there is a whole body of literature to understand how the speech parameter changes in a dysarthritis patient. All right. So it could be, let us say, how their format changes, or it could be how their pitch variation changes. It could be how their pause pattern changes, and all of that. So there are a large body of work on various aspects of acoustic analysis of dysertic speech. So now what I try to do, these are all this gamut of work. You can see so much work can be done. And there are many others which I did not include. So here I try to give, with references for each of those, like quality of life, then AAC, it could be eye tracking, brain computer interface, voice banking. Again, I give reference for some of them. ASRs, automatic speech recognition, that Google has a team called Euphonia. They're working on it. Then these are the acoustic analysis, and these are articulatory kinematics analysis, right? And early detection and monitoring. So for each of them, I've given some references. In case you're interested, you can always explore from some of this. So we are not going to each and every details of this because we don't have time that much. So with that, I'll sort of close the second part rather, unless any of you have any question. I hope that gave you a broad idea as to what are the types of research that are happening and are possible around this dysertic speech. Okay, great. So we'll move on to the next one. So the next one is a section where I'm going to present a series of experiments to tell you some of the interesting findings we have, which are quite insightful for us as well as for doctors. So before that, I must tell you our collaborators, Dr. Yamini, Dr. Nalini, and Ravi Yadav from NIMHANS. And without them, we could not be doing any of this work. So we actually start from the very base, right? We do not, as you know, there is no standard data sets available here. So it is we who has to create our own data. So we have a setup at NIMHANS where we record from these patients. So here is the setup, is the top view of the recording setup. So you can see from the left, there are two phones. In the middle, there's a laptop. On top of the laptop, there is another microphone, which is a Zoom H6, which is a very expensive microphone. And to the right, there's another smartphone. So there are three kinds of smartphone, laptop, and Zoom, 5 different devices. And these 3 different smartphones are chosen at 3 different price ranges to understand whether there is going to be any difference in the recording with the quality and the price of the cost of the phone. And of course, the Zoom H6 is very, very expensive. So that's a high quality recording. And then laptop will have a standard, right? So we just want to have the variety in devices. And all of these devices record simultaneously. I'll tell you how we do it, right? So here is a picture of we recording that setup. And what happens is we, in the laptop screen, we present something. I'll tell you also what we present. And accordingly, the person or the patient speaks something. And all the devices are turned on first. Then we have we make a sound, whistle sound, which are recorded in all the microphones. With that, we get to know how to synchronize all the microphones. After that, the patient starts recording. And the entire recording happens, entire data is stored, and then we synchronize and then can cut for various tasks. So what all tasks do we record? We record a picture description task. We show a very funny picture, as you see on the screen, and ask them to speak. So the screenshot that you see is a screenshot from the MATLAB interface, where we show a picture or any other task to be done, and you have a bunch of buttons to start recording, stop recording, skip, and all of that. And then we have number 2, spontaneous speech, where we ask the person to speak on any topic of his interest or her interest. Then we have the diadochokinesis, which is DDK task, Pataka, as I said. And then we have the sustained phonation, which is for the vowels A, I, or A, E, O, U, A, S, Sha, and Fa, right? So they have to speak all of them in sustained manner. So these are the stimuli we record. So we already heard a few samples, right? I'll not repeat them because that will be quite repetitive and boring. But you pretty much got an idea as to how to do this sound, right? So I'll not play that. I also played for the diadochokinesis. So let me try to see if I can play for the sustained phonation, which I did not. Right? That's for healthy. This for Parkinson's. You can feel that there is, lung capacity is less for ALS. So there's a lack of clarity even in the sound itself, right? So they can't articulate even. They can't really open their mouth big and say ah, right? That's quite difficult. So they say ah kind of sound. Like that. So now with that data that we started collecting from 2017 in a very systematic manner. And as we kept collecting, we started asking a variety of questions. And what I'm going to do is now we'll present question or what is our main hypothesis, and I'll present the experimental result and tell you what we found, right? And before I begin, for example, this slide, I also tell the question, along the question, I also tell the papers which has been published for that specific task that I'm presenting or the experiment that I'm presenting. Okay, I hope you're all okay with the format. So you now know that we are recording from NIMHANS, we are collecting data, now we're asking questions and doing experiment on that data. And of course, as you also know, that collecting data is not simple at all. More difficult is annotating the data, right? You may get a half an hour recording. Out of that, you may end up getting only 10 minutes effectively for that patient. But you have to sit down and very painstakingly and carefully mark each of the tasks from where to where. For example, in this entire recording, you will not have this sound papa papa all the time. There will be silence, somebody else speaking, all of that will happen. So to manually, systematically keep marking. And that painstaking task, the team members does here. And that's the hard work that they have to put in. Okay, so the first question you're asking, we already know that the muscles become weak. So that will directly affect the articulatory features, right? Because they are connected to muscles directly. So we wanted to ask, if we record somebody's articulatory movement and record speech from them, which one gives a better prediction about classification of ALS and healthy people, right? And for that, we got some subject from which we could record both speech and the motion of articulators. I'll tell you how we record the motion of articulators, but before that, let me tell you the task that they perform during the recording. There are three kinds of tasks. One is rehearsed speech. In the rehearsed speech, we tell them to speak like this. My name is XYZ. I am now in Bangalore. So in their native language, not English. So they speak that some number of times. Then task 2 is they have to speak monologue on some topic. And then task 3 is they have to repeat a bunch of words after the doctor. So suppose the doctor says topi, then they have to also tell topi. So it's repeating or mimicking the doctor. So there's three tasks we got. And at that time, in the very beginning, we didn't have many subjects. We had only 8 healthy controls, healthy people, and 8 patients. Out of them, 5 are male, 3 are female. And as you can see here, their age and ALSFRS score are also mentioned. Very small data set. But what we could manage is that from each of these patients, we could record also what is called electromagnetic articulograph recording, which gives us the motion of the articulators. So as you can see on the top right, we connect sensors at various articulators. And then as they keep speaking, the sensors move. And we trace, the device trace what is the movement, right, of each of these articulators. So that gives us a parallel data. Along with speech, we get this motion of the articulators. And from this entire collection, we have very little data, right? 8 subjects. We had rehearsed speech, which is for control, it is in the range of 6 to 19 seconds. For patients, it is from 10 to 69 seconds because it takes time, right? They're very, very slow in speaking. So they really drag and go for a long time. Number 2, for spontaneous speech, for healthy control, C, it is from 15 to, again, 1 minute. But again, for patients, it's higher, and so on and so forth, right? So patients typically take longer time to speak because they're slow in speaking. So from the motion of the articulators, we calculate these features. One is called velocity features. So from each of the sensors, see, it's written from each of these, it's the upper lip sensor, which is connected to the upper lip. We get the x direction and z direction motion, which is in the mid-sagittal plane, not perpendicular to that. So we take that ULX, as you can see here, right? Then we convert that into velocity by subtracting the consecutive values. And then we also calculate acceleration by subtracting the consecutive velocity values. And then considering the x and z two direction, we calculate the velocity norm. Okay? So this gives us the velocity norm value at each sample. And that's how we have 6 sensors. So we end up getting 12-dimensional static articulatory features and 6 velocity, 6 acceleration features. Right? So these are all the articulatory features that we used in parallel to the speech features. So let us look at what are the speech features. So for speech features, we look at MFCC, which is in the 5th row. For other, the top 4 are all articulatory features: the velocity, the acceleration, both velocity, the acceleration, and then static, velocity, and acceleration. And the number in bracket tells you the dimension of the feature, right? And then the MFCC is 39 dimensional, male frequency capsule coefficient. And then altogether, it is 87 dimensional features. So we use each of them separately and do a very systematic experiment to see how well we can classify the ALS people from healthy individuals. I hope the setup is clear to all of you, right? That is a simple experiment to ask whether MFCC does better or the articulators, which are directly recorded, right? They do better in terms of classification. So this is how we do the classification, right? We have the MFCC feature sequence or whatever, the velocity feature sequence. We calculate from the frame level features, we calculate suprasegmental level features. Meaning we take a, let's say, 1 second chunk, right? We actually try with 0.8 second with a shift of 2 seconds, because that's found to be the best. So take a 1 second chunk. In that chunk, you have many MFCC features because there is a trajectory of MFCC features. So you take the statistics of those MFCC features, like the mean, standard deviation, all of that. And that you use as a classification feature. That with that you train the SVM, support vector machine, or a deep neural network. So once you build the classifier with those features, then you do the testing. And in the test time, when you get a long utterance, we'll do this chunking, right? 1 second or 0.8 second. On each 0.8 second, we'll get a decision. And then there are multiple 0.8 second windows. We take the majority decision across all those windows. And we get the final decision on the record. So that's how we set up the experiment, right? So once we look at the result, things are quite revealing. See, if you look at the results here, it says on the top, the table is using SVM classifier. It's F-score. The bottom is DNN classifier. Okay. And then columns are different features. Rows are different tasks. Now, the blue numbers are the highest number in each row, telling which feature did the best for that task. So, for example, if you go to task back, right? We had 3 tasks, right? Task 1, 2, and 3. So here, if you look at, we had also 3 tasks. So we want to see for rehearsed speech, which feature does the best. For repeated speech, the words, dialogue, monologue, what happens, right? So as you can see, most of the greens, most of the blues are coming on articulatory features, not MFCC. See, there is not a single MFCC or blue. most of the high values, high accuracy are coming on the articulated features. So even for the DNA, that was the case, right? So it reveals that if you have access to articulated features, you will be able to do a better job of classification, unlike having the speech features. So now with that conclusion, we moved on, but I'll just stop for a bit. Anybody has any question on this? Okay, all right. Then I'll move on. Then he asked, see, we for this recording, we use a Zoom microphone. Question is, does it matter which device is used? Right? And we said, well, then you should do experiment with all the devices and find out which device does the best, right? Because there will be some quality differences in the. I'll just quickly tell you the answer. Here on the right hand side is the main result. But by the time we did this experiment, we got not 8 subjects, but we got already 50 subjects. We were constantly recording, right? So today we have nearly 600 subjects recording, right? And we are trying to learn various types of models and features on them to see if we can get better result. But at that, when we did this experiment, at that time we had only 50 subjects. And what we show on the right hand side are the columns in a different task. Then in each column, in every row, we have the different devices. For example, here you have MOT, which is Motorola phone, Zoom microphone. Then I think this is XIA, Xiao phone, and so on and so forth. There are 5 devices, right? There are 5 rows. Now, in each of the subplot for a device and for a task, you have 2 plots. You can see, right? Red and blue. So one is for SVM, another is for DNN. Right? And on the x-axis of each of this plot is the size of the window. See, we did 0.8 last time, but we want to see if it indeed, improves with bigger window. So that's why we did the experiment. Now, if you look at carefully, this by the way, we plot the accuracy here on the y-axis. If you look at carefully, DIDK pretty much does better in most of the cases compared to spawn and phone task. You can see that, right? DIDK is on the higher side. That's number 1. Number 2, if you check just the DIDK column because it does better, let's say, then we ask which device does the best. As it turns out that most of the devices, the numbers is around 90. You can see that, right? 90% accuracy. So you did not find device-wise difference. And also, as you can see that as you increase the window size, things are not changing much. So it was like 0.8 second was enough for. So it does. So 2 answers. Device doesn't matter, and 0.8 second is enough to calculate statistics and build a SVM or DNN classifier. I hope that is clear. Anybody, any question? Okay, great. So then we asked, well, enough of doing classification between ALS and healthy subjects. What about having a 3-way classification, ALS, Parkinson's, and healthy subject? So for that, because by that time we collected a bit more data, so we said, we're not going to stick to only SVM and DNN, let's change our classifier to a better one, right? We use what is called CNN LSTM, Convolutional Neural Network, Short Long-Term Memory Network. And what we did was, we took the feature sequence, we passed it to 1D CNN, get through max pooling, get the feature sequence, and put it to LSTM. And LSTM output pushed to dense layer through a softmax give the classification. So that's how the training happens. But in the testing time for a big recording, we take multiple chunks, and each chunks goes through this classifier. And across all chunks, the majority voting is taken, right, to get the final decision, just like the last time. We also tried out transfer learning. So what we did, we said that, well, suppose we have a lot of Parkinson's disease subjects data, but not that many of ALS. If we learn a classifier based on Parkinson's disease, can a little data of ALS help, or vice versa, right? So we train with ALS, for example, on the top, initialize that, and then we see how much of Parkinson's data is needed to do a good job as if we have the entire Parkinson's data. So for this, again, we did a systematic set of experiments of 3-class classification and 2-class classification. So for 3-class, we have all these ALS, PD, HC, and for 2-class, we have ALS versus HC and PD versus HC. Again, we compare with SVM and DNN. See, now we have come up with a new classifier, right? CNLST. So we have to show that it is doing better than SVM or DNN. So for that, we have now decent number of subjects, 60 in each class. The number of samples gone up to hours, not seconds. And we provide the details of all the classifier related parameters, right? So first outcome in the result is that the CNLSTM with a lot more data does way better than SVM and DNN, right? That is not surprising because we are using a more powerful model. And it's true for all the tasks. But you can compare the tasks, DIDK and spontaneous are way better than phonetic, phone task, right? Sustained phone. Then we looked at how much of the transfer learning helps here. So for example, here on the top, we show the results using ALS versus healthy control. And the bottom is PD versus healthy control, right? All that. And the columns are different tasks. So spontaneous, DIDK, and phone task. Now let's zoom in into one of them. Let's say we consider the bottom rightmost, right? Phone task. So in the phone task, this is a PD versus healthy classifier. So there are two pair of bars, right? One is the dark gray, blue, and light blue, let's say, right? So the dark blue is random initialization, meaning you just get the PD subjects data, build a classifier starting from random initialization. And then the light blue curve is, you see, TL transfer learning from ALS versus healthy. So we had a network which is having a lot of ALS data, healthy data. We train a network, we pre-train, and instead of random initialization, we start from that pre-trained network. So as you can see, when we use 100% of the PD subjects data, with pre-training, things improve a little bit, right? Of course. We reduce the number of data points of Parkinson's disease. Then it goes down. The dark blue goes down a little bit. Again, the light blue has improved. I think pre-trained network is better than randomly initialized network. That is what it's telling. But now look at what happens when I reduce the data to 10% compared to 100%. It tells that, of course, the performance of the blue curve, which is random initialization, really drops because that random initialized data network is only trained with 10% of the data, very, very little. It's a little scope of learning. But with that much of data, just 10%, a pre-trained network does way better, right? You can see that. It's pretty much in the same range, 70s, as that of using 100% data, right? So if you look at the 100% data, fully, random initialization, that's the best you can do with all the data. Just with 10% of the data with pre-trained network, you can do as good as that. That was a very interesting finding to tell people that in case you have one kind of data, right, or disease, that is enough. You don't have to collect the other one a lot, right? That's enough. Okay. We also did a 3-way classification. As you can see, we got so starting from 3-way classification, we also got 2-way classification, right? You can build a 3-way classifier which is 83, 85, and 77, and from there we saw how many cases. If we start from 3-class classification and then use that network to fine tune for the 2-class, how is the performance? So as you can see that if you fine tune, they do better, 98 and 90%, than without fine tune. So again, what it all tells is that if you build a classifier with a lot more data and a lot more classes, it always does a better job of initialization than directly doing a 2-class classification. So I hope that gives you an idea that when you do 3-class, we had new classifiers that are doing better. And also we learned that transfer learning does a good job. Everybody clear? Anybody, any question? Okay, great. Now I move to the next. Yeah, please.
Sir, can you explain that 2-class, 3-class here?
So see, we had 3 classes, right? 60, 60, 60 subject. So we build the entire network up to LSTM dense layer and the softmax, right? For the 3 class classification. Once the network is trained for 3 class, we throw out the last layer. We take the rest of the network, like the 1D CNN and LSTM. Then now add a dense layer with softmax. So we initialize the LSTM and the CNN with 3 class classifier network, and then use that initialization for a 2 class classification. That is called the fine tuning. But in the case when you don't do fine tuning, it's a direct. You just use the ALS and healthy control and directly do a 2 class classification. Does that make sense?
So you're saying that it is getting better result.
Yes, correct. Particularly in DIDK, you can see that 87 goes to 95, right? Or 84. Here, 86 goes to 89. Most of the time, it is doing better. In PD, in this case, it is not doing better, but majority of the time, it's doing better. Okay, any other question? Okay, great. I'll take a pause again and ask the moderator, how many minutes do I have now? So that I can accordingly present the rest of the material.
Sir, you can go for 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay, perfect. I'll also keep few minutes for questionnaire, maybe some 3 minutes,
Yes.
right? Till that time. Okay, fantastic. Now we asked the following question. Okay, we have been using MFCC as a feature, right? Is it the best feature, right? We have got a better classifier, learn transfer learning is doing good, all of that is great. But why keep on using MFCC? Why not learn what feature to choose? So for that purpose, instead of using MFCC as the input, we create a representational learning block, as you can see on the top, right? So on the top, we have this representational learning block where raw waveforms are put, and we have a 1D CNN layer which is running on the raw waveform frames. And then we do a max pooling. So this entire representational learning is placed in or kept in place of the MFCC alone. So we give raw speech and learn features together with the LSTM layer with dense and softmax. So we relax the knowledge based or frozen feature like MFCC. We say, well, let the network learn. And we have a very interesting finding I'm just going to present now. So the rest of the pipeline remains same. We'll take a test sentence, pass it to the network, do majority voting and all of that. Again, same set of subjects. I'm not going into the details. More data, actually, this time we used. And here in this case, we use CNN-LSTM because that's doing better, right? And we had to compare 2 things, right? We had to compare CNN-LSTM with raw speech with MFCC to show whatever we learn from raw speech is equivalent or better than MFCC or not. That will be a finding. So here is the result. So what we did was we did it in a task-specific manner, meaning separately for image task, we trained a network with MFCC and raw speech, where we features are learned. We can see raw speech has really improved over MFCC for image task. For phone task, it has improved, but not significant. So whenever it's significant, I make it blue. One is DIDK, again, it has significantly improved. Spawn, it has not improved at all, right? So you have this variety of conditions. Then we did also a pooled model, meaning we took all task data together and trained a network with MFCC and raw speech. So you can see that here in the 2 out of 4, yeah, 3 out of 4 cases, raw speech based features are doing better. So there is something that's happening while you're learning the features, not necessarily the MFCC is the best. So let's look at the other task. This is PD versus HG. Here, almost everything with raw speech does better, right? Then we also did PD versus ALS, not with healthy. There also half of them does better, right? I mean, majority of them are better in absolute sense, but not significant. That's why I don't mark them. But nonetheless, so with this, we said, well, then we must look at what features are being learned. And here is the finding and the key picture. So what we did in the CNN that you're learning, that you're applying on the net, on the waveform, right? We are learning 256 CNN filters. So after we learn the filters, we compute their spectrum. and we get 256 spectrum, right? So the 256 spectrum are kept in each row. For example, you take the right hand side, the ALS versus healthy. Okay, so there are 256 rows. So each row is one spectrum. And what we have done, we have ranked ordered all the spectrum based on their increasing value of the centroid. So you can see number 1 is here, number 2, number 3, like that it goes up all the way up to 256. And you can see that the peak, because the centroid will be near the peak, the peak keeps on increasing with the frequency as you keep on going with the filter index. That means that all that 256 filters that you have learned, you can see pretty much the mode or the centroid of the filter or that is learned, it is pretty much below 1000. You can see the red values, right? They are pretty much below 1000, right? Isn't it? So we found that, as you can see here, for the ALS versus healthy, if we calculate the cutoff, right, the CNN filters, so not the cutoff, the center frequency, they're all below 400 hertz. So we learned 256 filters, and all of them found to be below 400 hertz, which is unlike MFCC, right? In MFCC, we have these Mel scale filters going from 0 to all the way 4000 hertz, right? You can see that although we let the network learn, it is not learning outside this 1000 hertz. So that means there must be something below 1000 hertz, which is giving cues and it's doing better than MFCC. That means there must be something there. And that was quite revealing, right? And we'll tell you what we found. What is there below 1000 hertz? So for that, let's move to the next question. I think that will give us a good clue. I'll see how much you can cover because I have the 4 more minutes, but this is, I think, interesting. So we asked, okay, it means, I mean, we were thinking about this, right? What is there below 1000? But these 2 questions were published in one paper. And we then later realized that this paper also answers the question, what is there below 1000? So here we asked, okay, we are doing all these experiments in a very clean condition, because we record in a clean condition. What will be the impact of noise on these results? Also, at the same time, we said, well, we are training CNN LSTM, it's a heavy network, right? Can you simplify this network? And we have a very, very simple network. So in this paper in particular, we thought of what is called pitch. I'm sure many of you know. So we saw that if there's a pitch signal on the left, which is clean, in the second row is plotting the pitch with pitch contour. When you add a noise at 0 dB, you can see the waveform is completely noisy, right? But the pitch is of course not same as the clean pitch, but kind of similar. But on the other side, the MFCC get completely changed. So we thought, let us try using pitch as a feature. That was just a guess. Let's give it a try. And what it turns out that with pitch, we could do better than MFCC. And that was quite revealing that pitch alone can do a great job. So what we did was we kept the same network, but this time instead of giving MFCC, we give pitch as the input. And we tried various kind of networks of different complexity, right? Depending on the number of parameters and number of flops. So we tried 3 kinds of networks. What is called high complexity, medium complexity, and low complexity. And to match them, so we have a high complexity, both having 50K, 55K parameters for both MFCC and pitch, to see which one does better. Because pitch is 1-dimensional, right? Very single-dimensional input. And MFCC is 39-dimensional input. So we did all this training testing, different. In this case, we just use white Gaussian noise. But what was quite revealing, let me just go to the mismatch case. That will be quite revealing. So of course, we have to answer how do you extract pitch. There are various algorithms. We picked one finally. But then we found that when you go to a low complexity network, it turns out that if you use pitch, even at 0 dB, it does so good and so better than just using MFCC. Because there's a mismatch, right? See, the training time, you don't get to know what noise you're testing on. So it's a mismatch condition. In that time, pitch does way, way better. So pitch itself captures some information about the disease. And that's the reason probably the low frequencies were being learned in the network learning, right? And we believe, I mean, we have been working on that. Also, we have some more results, but we believe that pitch carries enough information. How the pitch is changing and varying with time, right? So I think there are a lot more experiments now within pitch. I think I'll not go into that because I have only 4 minutes left. What I would like to do, I'll anyway share the slides. If you have questions, please ask me, because we have series of experiments. I just want to mention that we built an app called NeuroCompanion, again for patients to use it at home, but it's been very challenging because the patients, when they hear that they have Parkinson's or ALS, they're already mentally dead, right? They don't want to try out anything. They think that their life is over, right? So it's very, very challenging, for their. But we have been trying to see whether we can really use it and get some feedback from the patients. So overall, I must conclude with these 3 points that we need to understand what are the acoustic and articulatory changes that happens when somebody is having dysarthria, number 1. And we have to, of course, keep thinking and working and building technologies to help these patients. As you can see, right, these patient counts are increasing and their quality of life is pathetic. So we should think of from the engineering point of view, at least from my side, right? I see that way, that what all we can do to help them. And this can't be done alone. We need engineers, we need doctors, we need a good, app developer, for example, right? Nobody is out of the equation to work together to solve such problems. Before I stop, I'd like to, acknowledge all students, project members who are working, and of course, doctors, without whom I could not have, or we could not have done this work. And I acknowledge DST because there have been support from DST in various parts of these projects. With that, I'll stop. If you have any question, I'll be happy to answer.
Sir, is there any publicly available database or provided by maybe your organization or some other organizations from where researchers
Good
can
question.
start?
Yeah. So see, first of all, these data are sort of sensitive because these are all clinical data. So ethics makes it very hard to make it open source. What we are currently doing now is we are trying to open source certain part of the data through a publication because we got some clearance, and that will be put, but it will take some time. So to answer your question, nothing is available freely publicly from IIC, but there is a corpus called Torgo Speech, Torgo database, and US Speech, right, where you will get some data which is of American speakers, not Indian speakers.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any Indian databases that are publicly available.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sir, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, so have you, out of curiosity, I'm asking actually, whatever the results, whatever you have presented, so how it goes with the Western databases like US Speech. Actually, US Speech has CP patients only, I think. The other PD or ALS, I think Torgo has one ALS. I don't know over the database comes with enough number of samples, but have you compared or any sort of how it goes? Indian, the patterns, how it is actually matching with the Western.
Correct. So we have not published on them because, as you rightly said, there is very few patients, particularly ALS, for example, right? But we have done some experiments on them, which we do not have published. And whatever other people have published, we have found pretty much comparable result. It's not drastically different.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
So I think, sir, the participants do not have any other questions.
Sure.
So maybe, sir, we can share your email ID and maybe in the future they can collaborate with the SPAR lab, as you have mentioned, given the email ID of the lab.
Absolutely.
So, sir, I find very useful work, sir. Very means it is very useful for the common man. Actually, the way you are working, the basic idea of the speech, and then diseases, whatever you are detecting, sir. A very nice one, sir. I found.
Thank you.
And sir, maybe we are few participants were also maybe interested in doing the similar line of work, whatever you have shown, sir. So definitely we'll require your help and support in near future to go ahead with these directions, because I really find this very good work dedicated towards a common man of, say, our country. Definitely it will be support our community and sir. So, sir, thank you very much, sir, for agreeing to give your expert talk on this occasion, advances in speech technology, opportunity and challenges. I must say that our participants have got enough understanding to start their work, because most of our participants are research scholars, and few from the faculty members who is already working on these domains. So they will definitely, I think, initiate your suggestions and directions, whatever you've given, sir. So thank you very much, sir. So namaskar, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
And sir,